Good morning, my friends, and welcome to Painting in Your PJs with Minette. I am Dr. Minette Riordan. I am in my favorite, oldest, comfiest pair of pajamas this morning and excited to be gathering with all of you here. Welcome if you're brand new to my channel. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. It helps me a ton if you click that subscribe button. And if you like what I shared today, be sure and click that like button. Leave me a comment. I really appreciate having comments from people that stop by. So what the heck is painting in your PJs with Minette? Well, first of all, I am a early morning person. Most of the time, I slept till 6:30 today, which feels like an incredible gift. And I love making a cup of coffee and coming down to my studio for some really sacred, quiet, creative time on my own. I might write, I might paint, I might play with some oracle cards. I have a whole series of things that I love to do, but there's always time for creative expression in the morning when it's just me. And now it's me here with you. Hugs and thank you, thank you. And very nice to see you back, Tori. Good morning, my friend. I am just back from a beautiful vacation on the coast of Oregon with my husband and our daughter and her partner. And it was a lovely time, and I came back feeling so rested. And of course, I made lots of paper dolls while I was there, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So I deeply believe that art is a transformative process, that art heals, and that as women in midlife, we can use art as a way to find ourselves again after perhaps years or decades of being lost. So this month, we are going to dive in and sort of blend a few different themes here on Painting in Your PJs. So if you've been following me for a while, we are in the season of the Paper Doll Chronicles. I'm a little obsessed with making all kinds of paper dolls. And it's spring. All the animals are waking up, babies are being born out in nature, and it's also National Poetry Month. So we're going to play with the themes of poetry and paper doll animals and see how we can match those up this month in some fun and different ways in our creative practice, and how can we use the poetry as a point of entry into our own practice of self-discovery. And if you're on my email list, I sent this poem out in my main newsletter as well as to the Paper Doll Chronicles email list. And if you're not on the Paper Doll Chronicles email list, the link to subscribe is in the description of this video. So we have a lot to do and a really fun project on the slate for today. Let me go ahead and change over, but I want to show you some of the things I am working on. I have a bunch of pattern designs to send all of you for some fun play with paper dolls. These aren't finished. I've started adding some stitching to them, but I had a lot of fun in the evenings in the hotel room doing a little drawing and practice, a little Easter bunny energy. I love rabbits. Brad said this was my like super goth magic inspired bunny. So I have some bunny templates for you. I have some owl templates for you. I had some fun with botanical drawing practice. And then I have some really fun chickens for you as well. And today we're going to make a bear. So, and there's some birds in here. So I've been playing a lot, and I will get all of these put together and sent out over the next few days to the Paper Doll Chronicles email list so that you have the blank templates to play with. But today I want to make a little bit bigger. So we're gonna do a lot of smaller ones this year, which feels really, or this month, which feels really fun. But today we're going to make this big bear. And this big black bear, so I live in a place where there's a lot of black bears. We don't see them hardly ever, and that's okay with me. Let them stay where they belong. But I was inspired by Mary Oliver's poem, Spring. It is one of my favorite poems, so I wanted to create the bear that shows up in her poem in honor of National Poetry Month. And because not only does it lend itself so well to this beautiful bear, and if you're on the Paper Doll Chronicles email list, I sent this out about half an hour ago, so the template's actually sitting in your email waiting for you. And if you're not on that list, you can subscribe and get a copy. But also because I think spring is a really powerful time to pause and consider where we are in our lives as women. You did Sarah's Zentangle Masterclass. Awesome. Are you talking about Sarah Vettler, Anne? And I'm not sure which Zentangle Masterclass, but yes, they are fabulous for Zentangle practice, all the animal templates for sure. But I really love to think about the theme of spring and this theme of waking up, and how can we be inspired by the beautiful words and the metaphors of Mary Oliver. So I'm going to read the poem to you, and then we're going to dive into making a sweet black bear today. Spring by Mary Oliver. Somewhere a black bear has just risen from sleep and is staring down the mountain. All night in the brisk and shallow restlessness of early spring, I think of her, her four black fists flicking the gravel, her tongue like a red fire touching the grass, the cold water. There is only one question: how to love this world. I think of her rising like a black and leafy ledge to sharpen her claws against the silence of the trees. Whatever else my life is, with its poems and its music and its glass cities, it is also this dazzling darkness coming down the mountain, breathing and tasting. All day I think of her, her white teeth, her wordlessness, her perfect love. I love this poem. It is such a beautiful poem. Good afternoon, Carolyn. Always lovely to have you here, all of you. And if you are here live and you're just watching, pop a note in the comments. Let me know you're here and say hello. So some of the themes that are here in this poem, the bear is that symbol of the inner self, just waking from hibernation. And it can really be a metaphor for awakening to ourselves, to reconnecting to our own inner feminine wisdom, that self perhaps that has been resting or waiting and is ready to emerge with renewed clarity and purpose at this time of life. I love the line about the bear. It's dazzling darkness. We don't often think of darkness as dazzling, right? That line is magical, and it captures so well the paradox of where we are as women in midlife, a time that could feel shadowy, uncertain, and disorienting, but it's also rich with insight and beauty and wisdom. It's a time where we recognize the lessons learned and the wisdom gained from our decades of experience. And I love this question, especially right now in this moment: how to love this world. How do we love this world? How do we love our own world right here within the body of ourselves, but in our communities and in a world that is experiencing a tremendous amount of chaos in the moment? And we can also think about the wordlessness and the perfect love, looking at ourselves, connecting to the nonverbal wisdom of our own body and our own soul. We have spent so much of our life as women of a certain age giving, caretaking, doing for others. And for me, this poem is a powerful reminder to reconnect to our beingness, right? To who we are, to our own embodied presence and fierce self-love. So think about the prompt as you're creating or listening or watching this morning, this idea of what is waking up in you this spring. So as I'm playing with this bear idea here, I'm thinking about what is waking up in me this spring. I really love that prompt. And that sounds amazing to do that with Sarah. Lucky you to get to spend the time with her. And Marion, hello, hello. And Teddy, good afternoon. Your favorite animal and archetype, I love it. I think you have a soul collage card with a bear on it, if I remember correctly. So I want to have some fun with this bear. I want to make it in my typical whimsical folk art style as I think about what is waking up in me. There's new creative ideas awakening. There's a desire to go a lot deeper into my own practice. I was texting with a girlfriend this morning, and being on vacation is amazing, but I've missed my quiet reflection time in my studio. And so I'm going to do something similar to the styles of these paper dolls that I created before. Definitely love adding the stitching to these and want to add some stitching. And part of, I think, I've been really obsessed with stitching on paper and on fabric lately. I just got some beautiful kits from Stitched Stories. Debbie, who lives on the East Coast, and we met because of a marketing conference and had a wonderful conversation. And I love her embroidery kits, so I just treated myself to a bunch of them to play with and experiment and get better at some of the stitches. Emma Freeman and I also have a retreat where we're going to be making fabric prayer flags in Oregon in September. And so I've been thinking about stitching a lot, but there's also something that feels again like being in women's circles where there used to be quilt circles, and doing this kind of handwork feels intimate and personal. It feels mindful in the same way that painting and my Zen Tangle practice do for me. So these are kind of some of the random thoughts that are flowing through my hello, Jennifer. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Glad to have you. So these are all some of the random thoughts that are flowing through my very full brain this morning. And I wanted to keep this very simple because we can get really caught up in making things really complicated. And I have been focusing a lot in this time of spring energy and spring, everything is just starting to be spring here in Colorado, and the trees are just coming out, and it's effortless and it's simple, right? And I have a love of making things complex. So my focus is how can I keep this really simple? So I am using some fun Sharpie paint markers. These are a very affordable paint marker. They come in two sizes, a fatter brush tip and then a thinner tip as well. And so I am going to dive in and play with this. I've also got just some different black fine tip markers in here. I'm going to pull those out. Might need some orange. Sort of thinking about a spring palette, even though this is a black bear. And maybe I do want the bear to be black and then add the patterns over the top. That's an idea. What color? Nope, the bear, you guys know how I roll. The bear is speaking to me already and says, bring on the color. It needs to be definitely a feminine flowery bear, but I'm just going to start by getting some color down on the page here. And I printed this out just on a piece of cardstock, nothing fancy or special. And it feels, again, that mindfulness of just slowing my roll, adding the color, letting go of needing to make this perfect. And as I'm starting to color the bear, feels like she needs a name. Might even be Miss Bear or something really simple. But I'm still thinking about the habits of bears after hibernating, right? When they wake up and begin to move around and they raise their nose up into the air and they smell. They have a really amazing sense of smell. And I'm noticing that the texture of these markers on this paper is interesting. It feels kind of like just like a Crayola marker. It's a little patchy. Think about that sense of taking that time, first of all, to rest, but after resting, that slow, lovely waking up, the pausing, the stretching. And over the last few years, I've been learning to rest more in winter, to not feel like I have to race into the new year at full speed, but to give myself permission to go a little more slowly. I do love this teal color. Oh, that's awesome, Teddy. Mine is hanging up here in the studio, and I love looking at it. And I've been wanting to make another one, but I've been having fun making sample prayer flags. And of course, because I'm obsessed right now with paper dolls and with animals, I'm thinking about how can I add some fun fabric paper dolls or animals to my prayer flags, combining all of my loves into one thing. All right. Those are tiny, tiny ones. I want a fatter one. So let's start to give him a little detail. I'm going to let that other paint dry up a bit. I want some color in there. Okay, I need a fatter black. There we go. One of the things I love about these Sharpie markers is that you don't like the post because you don't have to do the pump on them, that the ink flows really nice and smoothly out of them. And again, this idea of the bear is coming out from hibernation and looking up at the world around her, nose high. I think she might need to be maybe holding a bouquet of flowers. And I just signed up. I don't know if anyone else follows Lucas Lopez on Instagram. He makes these amazing paper dolls with all of these sort of different pop-up parts and fold outs. And so I've been really inspired by him and wanting to have some time to play and give this a try of adding little pockets and fold outs and adding more dimension to the paper dolls. So I'm looking at this beautiful big belly here, thinking it would hold a pocket really nicely, or a little accordion folded book. So we might get a little fancy with the doll. And I'm just adding the black outlines because it just adds some neatness to it. And I will cut the bear out as well once I'm done painting it. And I love her. She's starting to come together. Yeah, I don't have them sitting over here, but I've had a lot of fun making the prayer flags. So definitely a fun project. And bears are such interesting creatures symbolically, right? Like their habits, they tend to be very shy unless threatened. They've been seen here in our neighborhood when the berries and we have like a ornamental cherry that blooms everywhere here. They're very sour, but the bears really love them. And so they've been sighted in our neighborhood, and we've never seen them. And like I said, I'm not sad about that, about getting close up to bears. But bears are one of the animals that I tend to paint frequently. This definitely feels like a very happy bear. And so when you think about that, excuse me, that question of what is waking up in you this spring, what are you feeling or noticing right now? What are you feeling or noticing right now? I'm also sitting a lot with that question she poses of how can I love this world? How can I love this world? And for me, that has everything to do with finding the beauty and the joy in everyday moments. White, little sparkle in that eye. The white in this is not super opaque, so I might get a different paint pen or gel pen, but adding that just little bit of starting to bring the bear to life. And I'm wondering if a second coat we can cover up some of that. Nope, it's all going to come out the same. I don't use these very often, so it feels like a little bit of an experiment to play with these and see what I can do. My printer is going crazy behind me. It keeps beeping and talking. I swear it's possessed. Anybody else have a printer that's possessed like that? Actually, that did help a little bit, but I think it's going to be fine. Okay, it feels like she wants to be a very flowery bear. So I'm going to come in and just start to imagine if she is covered in flowers and maybe a fun mandala design in her belly. So wanting to really convey that feeling of not only is it spring and the bear is waking up, but it's a joyful bear, right? Like it's really that idea of honoring and celebrating who are we being. And we're going to see how these colors layer over the top here. And keeping things simple, like I said, it's not that we need this to be super complex, but we want to capture the beautiful spirit of bear. And it's amazing what we can create with simple shapes and patterns. When I think about, I've been on an exploration of my own style of folk art painting in my painting practice. And one of the things I love about folk art is the simplicity of the patterns and the colors and the shapes. And almost every culture has a folk art style. I think of the Aboriginal dot art painting. I think of the stunning black and white and red artwork of the Haida tribes of the Pacific Northwest, the totems they carve, the jewelry. The colors are simple, the patterns and the shapes are bold and simple. Think about Maud Smith, another famous folk art artist from Nova Scotia. You think of the Norwegian style of folk art, and it's very simple, right? There's not a need to have all this complexity all the time. Now, don't get me wrong, I also really love very detailed, complex designs. And I'm noticing the colors are all sort of blending together, and that's okay. And I can make dots for days. And as much as I love painting animals, I also love painting mandalas too. And just noticing how your creative practice can become an act of mindfulness, of being with yourself and with your breath. I find that when my hands are busy, the rest of me slows down, my thoughts slow down, and I can open up that space for some of that deep inner reflection that can serve us so well, especially in midlife. When we tend to question everything, we question our purpose, we question our role. I've been hearing from quite a few women in my programs lately that are newly retired or on the edge of retirement. What's next? And it takes slowing down and reflecting on what's most important to us to get there. And I think that's what I love about Mary Oliver's poetry is that it invites that slowing down, that looking, that seeing, that being with and in nature and with ourselves. All right, that is a cute bear. The colors are much brighter in person than they are on the screen. Good morning, Carol. Thank you. He's coming together. She's coming together. It's definitely a girly bear. There we go. A couple of layers to brighten that up a little bit. I love the big fat brush tips on these Sharpie markers. They actually make quite a few different shapes and marks. And so I'm also enjoying here just kind of playing with what can I do with the different tips and shapes here. And I think I'm not going to put anything on the bear because I want to play with this idea of adding a little belly pocket to the bear that I might tuck a bouquet of flowers into as part of the story and part of the focus on what is emerging in the spring of my life right now, what's being renewed or refreshed. I belong to a beautiful organization called the Dames. It's a global organization for women in business and in corporate leadership, and I'm the president of the local chapter. Once I get started making all the dots, I can't stop. And one of our members facilitated this amazing conversation last night about social impact and what's the impact that we have on people, like how do when and how do we get that opportunity to touch other people's lives. And there were some just amazing stories that were shared, and the woman who was speaking shared a story about a woman who had been dean of home economics at our local university and had gone to Columbia University. She was friends with Eleanor Roosevelt. Okay, that blue doesn't show up on there. And at the time that she went to Columbia, they didn't let women get engineering degrees. So she took all of the classes anyway and then made them give her a degree. And Tammy went on to describe all the amazing things this woman had done in her life, and she's largely been forgotten. And it was so just inspiring to hear this story. And then to invite the other women in the room to share the ways that we've been able to touch people's lives. And it's another way of wakening up to our own wisdom, is to really pause and look at all the different chances we've had to touch someone's lives, even if it was unexpected, right? Or happen, you know, an occurrence like that just happened by magic. You meet someone and they need some help. Like one of the women shared a fun story of a hiking group that she has. They were hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park, and they would always take these fancy gourmet picnics with them on these hikes. And they always had too much food and were, trying to share it. And they were hiking back down the hill and they came across a woman and her two daughters, and they were all wearing birthday party hats. And the woman was in her 70s, and they happened to have a cake and even I think some candles, and had not, like the cake hadn't been cut into. It was like a whole cake. And so they stopped this group of women that had been hiking together, and they offered this woman the cake, and this whole group sang happy birthday to her on a trail in the middle of Rocky Mountain National Park and shared this cake with her. And it's like little moments like that that just happen that allow us to share our gifts for with others. So as you're thinking about where you are at this moment in time, what's emerging in your life right now, think about how do you get to show up for others in a way that doesn't feel like always having to be the caretaker or always having to be over giving, but feels like a magical opportunity to make an impact. It might be mentoring a younger woman. It might be getting the chance to spend special time with grandbabies if you have them. It might be volunteering in your community. It might be through your career and the work you get to do in the world. Okay, I'm in love with my little chubby happy bear here. So cute. All right, I need a sip of water. So I think I want to add some beads and some stitching to my bear, and a little pocket also feels really fun, or maybe some kind of flip open thing inspired by Lucas Lopez. A little sip of water. I also have this stencil sitting here. Maybe she needs a little, these are is like a little moth, but maybe she needs like a little silly butterfly on her nose. Like it feels like there that she wants some more elements to be added here. So let's see what we can do with some of these scrappy bits of paper. What I am going to do is cut out the belly, and so I can kind of have a shape for what it is that I want to create for the pocket here. Because I kind of want it to fit. I want to kind of have it almost like a little kangaroo pouch, even though, yes, I know it's a bear. But somehow that little sort of secret magical pouch there. When it's white, it looks like a diaper, which is hilarious. Um, okay, and we're going to make that yellow also. And I think I'm going to stitch the pocket on rather than glue or tape it on. That's better. So now you can't even see that pocket is there. You will once it's stitched on, and I'm going to let that dry for a second, and it feels like she's going to want some little tiny flowers in her pocket there as she's gathering up the beauty of spring, maybe even a little butterfly tucked in there. So I'm just going to do the same thing that I did for the bear, and I'm going to create a few simple flowers. My daffodils are just coming out, and they're itsy bitsy, teeny tiny. They don't get taller than about 4 or 5 inches. And when we were in Oregon, the daffodils were so abundantly blooming and beautiful. An apron type pouch. I love that. It would be appropriate for my mama bear to have an apron. So I'm a little obsessed with playing with different pop-up ideas right now. And we just released our next mythical makeover experience. I created a fun and a very humorous story this time. about becoming the fairy godmother of your own life. And I have done my first template of a pop-up fairy tale landscape with a meadow and a cottage. And I am so excited about this one. It's going to be a really fun story that kind of is a fun play and spin on fairy godmothers from Cinderella. I'm being impatient and not letting that dry, which is not good for the pen. A fun play on the fairy godmothers from Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty. And my husband and I had some fun as I was writing this story, looking up the history of the fairy godmother and like when did she first appear. And it was actually a French writer who was one of the first to write a version of the Cinderella story before the Grimm brothers that introduced the idea of the fairy godmother. And often in history, she was seen as the wise old woman, the crone, and not necessarily like I think about the Disney version of Sleeping Beauty with all the silly fairies. And I like to think of her instead as, wise and cheeky and there to show us who we are, not to wave a magic wand and make everything perfect, but to show us that we, like the bear, have that power to reawaken to ourselves at any time. Oh, actually, maybe we need some tulips. In the week that we were in Eugene, it was like spring sprung while we were there, and we left Eugene and drove out to the Oregon coast for 4 days. And by the time we got back to Eugene, the rhododendrons were blooming and all the tulips were blooming. And it was so, so very green. It is not green here. It is still pretty brown. So what a pleasure to be in the midst of all of that green energy. Lots of pink tulips, especially. And again, notice the simplicity of the flower shapes. Like there's nothing complicated here, right? Like sometimes we try too hard to make things realistic. And what we need instead is just to draw like a kindergartner. Okay, we're going to let all our little flowers dry and they're going to go in the pocket of our bear. And I've got a box of fun threads of different kinds. Look at that really sparkly one. I don't even know where all this stuff came from. This looks really fun and interesting. Oh, how long is that? Okay, we're going to play with some of this sparkly gold and get our pocket stitched on, but it feels like it's funny because before I started, I pulled out some Liquitex gold acrylic paint because it felt like my bear might need some sparkles. Okay, we're just going to go with this one. And I love stitching on paper. It's sometimes a little tricky, so there's some Sometimes it helps if you pre-poke your holes. It makes the process go a lot faster. I'm going to use all 6 threads in this skein. I want it to be kind of nice and thick along there. And find a needle over here. I have to find one that is actually big enough to take all 6 threads of embroidery floss. I love this little, what are these called? How did I just forget the name of the thing you stick the needles in? That's hilarious. But my mom, when I left for college, she made me a sewing box out of an old hat box that had been my grandmother's hat box, pincushion, there's the word. And oh, there's some nice white too. And she bought this for me in Chinatown in San Francisco. And to this day, all these years ago, I still have that old hat box and that old pincushion that she made for me all those years ago. And it has traveled a lot with me. And so I think the other thing I'm loving about stitching, this cigar box full of thread came from my stepmom's craft closet after she passed away. Let's see, do I have an awl over here? Maybe. I do. No, that's not. Okay, we're going to use the needle. So what I'm going to do to make this go a little bit faster, and an awl is the easiest thing to do with, and oh, there's my awl. I knew I had one on the table somewhere, is to just take an awl and pre-punch your holes. You can see when I'm stitching right through 2 sheets of cardstock, it would be hard to punch a needle through there. So I'm just going to punch those holes, and then it's going to be super quick to get our thread going through there. So it's kind of like bookbinding, right, where you pre-punch the holes. I'm looking to make them more or less even. And I'm thinking like a little sort of applique stitch along the edge. So I think one of the things that I love about adding the stitching in particular to the animals is it sort of mimics the texture, kind of mimics the fur a little bit. So it needs, our bear needs to be fuzzy. And I'm going to paper clip would work too, just kind of hold that apron in place so it's not moving around. See, now I'm calling it an apron teddy. And I think one of the things I love about the mixed media art is there's no limits to what we can incorporate. And when I think about over the last, 10, 15 years of really sort of coming into my own as an artist, there's been a lot of just practicing and experimentation, a lot of combining and trying things and being okay with things not working, with things that I tried something and I ended up with mud, or it was too messy or busy. So being willing to test and experiment and try things and mess things up is an important part of the process. Okay, I'm just going to do a running stitch. I think will be perfect and fast. And then I'm going to look at where else do I want to add some stitching to our bear here. And then my thought is about how can I then take copy the words of the poem and also pay attention to what I'm doing. I find it hard to talk and stitch. I can usually talk and paint, but talking and stitching is harder. How can I incorporate this into an art journal page, right? To have an interactive page with the poem, and then I'm like, maybe I want to write the poem on the back of the bear. See, I'm not paying attention and I got a knot. And there's something about, and I'm looking at it now going, oh, it might have been fun to have a contrasting color here, but there's something about the idea of having a little bit of a secret pocket. So another thing that might go in the pocket is maybe a little scroll or a little note to myself, some kind of little reminder. Something about poking the holes first also felt like, a childhood stitching guide as well. So there's something about working with the mama bear energy that there's some nostalgia here for me that I'm noticing. And so I'll be on the hunt for other poems about animals. I could do all Mary Oliver all month because she has so many beautiful, beautiful poems that talk about animals. I remember one about a heron, definitely one about an owl. All right, I'm going to go back around one more time. And I'm thinking about, I grabbed a box of beads and I have these sparkly yellow beads that might be fun here. Mama Bear was one of your first impressions. Say more about that. Say more about that, Marion. I love that. I've also often been told that I have Mama Bear energy. And as I was looking at images of bears and playing around and talking about bears, then of course Instagram starts to show me all kinds of silly bear videos. They're very playful animals. And so I think Mama Bear also, this waking up in spring is a reminder to get out and move our bodies and to enjoy the day and enjoy the spring. right. Where else? It feels like I could do some little French knots in the center of the flowers. I could also do some beads there. It feels like I could add some orange. Um, so definitely gonna keep playing with her. She doesn't quite feel complete yet, but I pulled out one of my little pamphlets from my book that I've been working in, and it feels like she's going to have a story that emerges. And I even love that she's going to stick up outside of the book here, but she wanted to be part of this journey. I showed this journal before, so this is a daily creative practice journal design created by my friend Andrea Chebelut of Work a Heart Studio. And she teaches a different version of this every year, but I love these folders. They're made out of manila file folders. And I have a few sets of dolls now to work into the book. So you can see I have a lot of creative projects on the go that feel really fun. And so this is interesting. There was something about maybe my bear needs some butterfly wings and some flowers added. So she definitely feels like she has more of a story emerging here. Okay, that definitely feels fun. So I love this card, but I will find some other butterfly wings and some flowers. And let's come back to our other little flowers here and do a little fussy cutting. And I think one of the things with the paper dolls that I've really been sitting with a lot lately is that they're all little works in progress. Like I love Tori shared her on Instagram and also in our forum, her beautiful inner child paper dolls. And it took time, right, to create them. It wasn't like an hour-long process, but to think about each of these aspects of ourselves that we've been creating for 3 months now. They're not just aspects of ourselves, but they're works in progress. Each of us is a work in progress, a lifelong work in process. And each of these dolls becomes a part of the beautiful whole of who we are. And so not always to feel like we have to finish every project in one setting. It's nice when it happens, but sometimes we find the right image or the right color or the right word to add to our story, randomly flipping through a magazine. So to be mindful of that, to not be in a rush to finish things. All right, those need a little bit more fussy cutting, but I want to kind of have that idea of life is blooming here. So I'll cut the rest of those out. Yeah, she definitely feels like there's more that wants to happen here. And that she's going to, if I go back to Mary Oliver's beautiful poem about the bear rising from sleep and staring down the mountain as she begins to wake up and to walk, right? So I think there's maybe a spring landscape that wants to get painted. The words to the poem also want to get added. So all of a sudden this goes from just being a poem and a bear to a story of emerging out of the dazzling darkness into the wordlessness and the perfect love and into that question of how to love the world. As always, thank you so much for joining me live. Thank you for catching the replay. If you're on the Paper Doll Chronicles email list, watch your email. I sent out this template for the bear this morning, and I have a bunch more fun spring animals coming, as well as more poems and more animal joy. Thanks, everybody. Great to be back with you this morning, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Have a great rest of your day. And please take a moment to click like on the video. Let me know if you enjoyed this and let other people know it is a video worth watching. In appreciation and gratitude, thanks so much and have a beautiful spring day. Bye, everybody.